Hey guys, Harv here, and welcome to Starmade. What is Starmade? You may have seen the trailer that I posted a few days ago on my channel, basically introducing the concept of another game apart from KSP to HOCgaming, but I haven't really gone into detail about what it is. In that video I talked about shooting pirates and mining space stations and a load of nonsense that is very different to anything we've encountered in KSP. But I didn't really go into exact details of how the game works. According to starmade.org, which is the official Starmade website where you can download this game free to play currently, it's in undesignated alpha or somewhat. According to that, it is a Minecraft-inspired 3D sandbox space shooter, which is really tricky to say without stumbling, so I'm happy I've done it the first time. And that essentially means it works the same way as Minecraft, where you have different types of blocks and you can put them together to build things in 3D space. But there is one key difference, which is that you can build spaceships and actually move them around, and you can fire them, and you can fire at different ships and with different consequences. And the game is based mainly for multiplayer, though it is also available in single player. This is currently on a multiplayer server, and I am not starting out from a fresh save, so I don't have exactly what you will have once you load up the game, but you will have something very similar, which is a heads-up display exactly like this, with a load of items which you can scroll through at the bottom there, either by pressing 1, 2, 3, 4, or by using the scroll button on your mouse. And these are your basic starting items for building your first ever ship. What you'll realise as you go on in this game is that your concept of what a good ship is changes, and it'll never go back. That's a problem. Like, I was intending maybe to do, hey, this is HOCgaming, learning a new game, but it's hard to recreate that process once you've done it. It's a very unique experience of building bigger and bigger ships in an arms race, basically, and it's something that is really fun. So, starting out, how does the game work? Well, you'll spawn in a place like this. This is a shop, and in the shop, which you can access by pressing B, you have a lot of different things that you can buy, a lot of different tabs, which to start off will probably be closed. And this is your first main tab that you'll need to be using, which is called Ship. And in Ship we have all the main things. The game works, I've compared it to KSP's way of building things, which isn't really true, as in parent parts. So your first item which you'll be using, which you will spawn with, is the ship core, which I currently have in inventory slot 6. To build a new ship you need to press X, and as long as you have a ship core it will come up with this thing. So let's call this our first ship, if I could spell first correctly. I'm just going to go through the basic things. Now, at the moment, this is pre-alpha. Oh, no, it's not even pre-alpha, it's in alpha. But it means it's very unpolished, I would say. It's really not very polished. So, you can't do spaces, so underscores are going to have to make do. Our first ship. And here you go, you've successfully spawned in the start of your ship. Now you can get to building. You can either do this, you can do this around the entire world, I believe, or can you not do it on a shop? No. You're not allowed to modify a shop. You can do this on asteroids, which are dotted around. There are planets that you can go to. There's even suns you can go to. Never been to one myself. Or you could just start building with what's in your inventory straight off of this ship core. However, it's a good idea to access it by pressing R, and this will take you into two different modes. Here we have flight mode, which is what you'll be using probably most of the time in terms of combat and whatnot. You can move around using Q and E to go up and down, you can use WASD to go forwards, and you can rotate all the way around with the mouse. Also, holding control allows you to turn like this, which is so useful because, and you can also hold shift. There you go, shift will stop you in terms of relative motion, because as you turn you will in fact start to tilt. We're not, for some reason. You usually end up tilting, so you're going to end up using holding control, moving the mouse to rotate quite a lot. So this is flight mode. You can access build mode by pressing S, which will take you into this view, and with an isometric grid placed around your blocks which you can place. It also has this arrow icon, which spawns first time you go into build mode, telling you what direction your ship is facing. A newbie mistake to make is to not really understand which way the ship's facing. So I've spawned it in, I'm facing this way, maybe the ship's building this way. So I start building my ship off in this direction. And what happens? Flight mode is this way. So, and you can't change that. You can't just move blocks around. You have to rebuild everything. It's very important to know exactly which way your ship is facing. So, the active end of the ship is forwards. That's the opposite end, obviously. So, what we're going to do? Well, to start off with, we have a certain amount of items, but this really isn't enough to make your first ship. Because you start off with very few credits. Ignore the amount of credits I have. I have billions upon billions after playing the game for quite a few hours. Well, I say quite a few hours. It's been maybe 2 weeks now, something like 2 weeks. But you won't start off with all the resources necessary, so you're going to have to go into the shop. Top right there says shop is in range, so press B, we can go to the shop, and there's a certain amount of stuff you want to pick up first. Such as salvage computers and salvage cannons. The way mining works in this is similar to Minecraft. Build is actually a left click and replace, or mine is actually right click, which is opposite to Minecraft for some reason. And you can do that, you can just mine things as you would normally in Minecraft. Except for the fact that that's not the best or most efficient way to do things. Instead of upgrading your pickaxe, you are actually going to be using things called salvage beams, which I've already bought into my inventory. Now, you have salvage cannons and you have salvage computers. For most active blocks, such as your weapons and all your different types of missiles, your explosives. Actually, no, explosives don't have computers, what am I talking about? But your weapons and your salvage cannons are controlled by computers. So, we'll start out with the weapons, seeing as that is something you'll have by default. You place your computer first, or if you end up placing your cannons first, you can bind them afterwards. And as soon as you place your computer, you can see it has this orange glow around it. This means it's your currently active and selected block. You can unselect blocks by pressing C, and you can select them again by pressing C again. So we've selected our weapons computer. Now we can start placing antimatter cannons, which will have a purple glow around them if they're correctly bound. So the way we'll explain more about this later once we actually get to using the cannons, but we have a weapons computer which we've bound to our weapons. If we try to perhaps place a salvage cannon, we'll get an error message saying that it can't be connected to the weapons computer. If we want to put our salvage cannons, say we're going to put them up here, and we want to connect it to a salvage computer, we'll need to place a salvage computer down, say here. By placing it, you're automatically selecting it, and you can toggle between different ones. So select our salvage computer, and in order to bind a cannon of the same type to a computer, you can press V. And similarly, V toggles whether it is selected or not. This is important to remember. Don't go placing all your cannons and putting them in awkward places, because you're going to have to bind them later. So we can deselect this. So say we select our weapons computer, and we can toggle which cannons are bound to that particular computer. Something important to remember. So we've got cannons and we've got salvage computers and salvage cannons, but we're missing certain things. Now before I go on, I'll just talk about how the system works in terms of power and power. How powerful your cannons are depends on how many you've got placed in a certain array. An array means that blocks are perpendicular to each other with a face touching a face. So I've got here 6 cannons all touching, which means this array I've got here is going to do damage proportional to a number 6. I could build more up here. I've run out of blocks. But these will do a certain amount. So this is just one by itself because it's not touching any of the ones over here, which means we've got 2 arrays. This one a lot more powerful than this one, obviously. Now, here we go. So you can stack them further back and you can make very long arrays, or you can have them very wide. Whatever you do, it'll end up being, I think it'll end up being the same amount of power. There are some complexities to how powerful things are and how much power they consume to work, which we'll go on to in a second, that escape me. I need to play the game a bit more and actually do some reading on that before I talk to it about you. God, I can't talk. Before I talk about it to you with any reasonable amount of confidence. So, you can make things, you make your weapons, make your salvage beams more powerful by putting more of them together. Which is a very simple concept to grasp. And similarly, if we want to select our salvage computer, we can place more salvage beams down and make it more powerful like that. So, we've got this. Now, what am I talking about in the other connotation of the word power? These computers and these weapons need power to function. They need this constant feed of electricity. If we press space and go back into flight mode, we've got no thrusters apparently, which I need to put on later. But if we were to fire our cannons now, or our salvage beams, there's no power supply for them. And our weapons have got no power supply. Salvage beams don't use power. Okay, salvage beams don't use power, but the weapons do, so nothing's happening. And when you go into the build mode after entering a new ship, you won't have anything on your bottom bar. Just clicking once should automatically set everything to be able to be used. This is where binding comes in. Because if I didn't have any of my salvage cannons bound to that salvage computer, which I can do by pressing V on each one, and I go into flight mode, I've got no salvage cannon firing, unlike it was just then, because it's not bound to that particular computer. This means you can have more than one weapon computer and more than one salvage computer, and have different arrays of weapons bound to different keys, basically, or different selections in your different inventory. In order to do that, we need to press T, and it comes up with this tab in our menu, which will allow us to do that. So salvage computer is currently set, as you can see by that number in the bracket, to the first inventory slot in our inventory. Just by clicking on salvage computer, we can see details about it on the right, and I can press 2 to set it to 2, I can press 3, 4, 5, etc. Weapons computer, which I like to have on 1, click on that and we can see our reports on our different arrays. So the first array which we've got, let me just have a look here. So we've got 2 arrays currently. We'll make one a lot more powerful than the other, say there. And we haven't bound them, we need to enter our weapons computer, there we go, and we need to bind them to it. Right, so we'll go into this mode, we'll go to our weapons computer, click on it, and we can see the first array we've got does 62 damage, second array does 35 damage. So it's pretty clear that the one that does the more damage is the one we've got over here. And that is basically how the inventory system works. Set my weapons computer to 1, I'll set, oh there we go, set it to 1, salvage computer, set that to 2. This is by pressing the number keys, by the way. And there we've got that set up. Now, we can't use our weapons because we don't have any power. This is where the power blocks comes in, and I believe once you do spawn you will actually have power blocks in your inventory by default. So let's actually just even out our cannons here. There we go, and we'll put these behind it, like so. There we go. So we've got some cannons, we've got some salvage computers and some salvage cannons, and now we want to power up our cannons. This is interesting. Now you might assume starting off that if you place one power block you'll get a certain amount of power, and you'd imagine if you place another power block you'd get twice the amount of power, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times and 6 times. It doesn't work like that. It does for other things, but it doesn't for power, which is where it actually gets interesting, because otherwise it would be, hey, you're building, you're doing architecture and all that lot, but you're not actually really having to think about it much apart from, ooh, will it look better over here or over here? There's actually a concept of challenge to making on generating power. And we can see our power rating, by the way, on the left there. There's a number which is growing rapidly, and that's trying to fill the capacity we can hold with the power we're currently generating, which is 526.4 energy per second. Energy per second isn't a real unit of power, it's just what they use in the game for some reason. But yeah, so we're currently generating that amount of power, and it gets less as we take away these blocks. The way power works, one reactor, which similar to an array of cannons, is determined by a certain amount of blocks together. Now all these blocks are touching via one another, so this is one reactor, and the amount of power you generate is, unless I'm very much mistaken, proportional to the volume enclosed by each reactor. Now the volume enclosed is an interesting concept. Say we have 15 blocks in our inventory down there in slot 2. If we were to use, I don't know, 6 of them, or no, we'll say 9 of them. 9 of them in this way. We've got a 3x3x0, or by 1, 3x3x1 shape. A 3 square, 3-sided square, there we go. So we're enclosing 3x3, and we're using 9 blocks. If we were to take away and leave this, and then put 4 more blocks, say 3 up there and 1 there, we're using exactly the same amount of blocks. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, but we're enclosing a larger volume. We have got a 4 by 3 by 4 cube. We're currently generating 1,279 E per second. Take that away, put it back to where we had it. Oh, sorry, I was actually using more blocks there because I'm an idiot. But you can see, even with that there, we're currently generating 863, which is a lot less. So, reactors work by enclosing a certain area with your blocks. And that was something that I took a while to grasp. So you're not alone. That is a more efficient reactor than using the same number of blocks in a flat plane. Now, there's actually an interesting concept because it doesn't work quite like that. I'm still trying to figure it out, as are the people I play this game with regularly. But it seems that the more reactors you make, the harder it is to generate more power afterwards. There's interesting concepts which I really would like to talk about, but I don't feel informed enough yet to go really into detail. I will be going into a bit more detail in the future, and I'll probably make a special video exactly just on the ways of generating power. Because you might think, okay, we've got to describe a volume. I'm not going to go into detail right now, but we have to describe a volume. So the best way to do that is describe a cube, right? There we go. That's a certain amount of power. Surely that's the most efficient way to do it. Well, when you have to make more than one reactor, I mean, you could just make this one bigger as you get more blocks, but if you want to make it in as small a space as possible, what if you have another reactor in the opposite way? So say we're having a reactor here. You know, you can have it taking up the same space, you can have them in the same volume, but because they're not touching, you're actually generating more power because these are two separate reactors. Again, there's a lot of stuff to go into, there's a lot of stuff to cover in terms of how to make the most dense reactors, how to make the most efficient reactors, and I'll probably go into that in another video. For now, if you want to make a lot of power, just console yourself with trying to get the greatest volume possible. And I'm just going to make a pretty pattern because you've also got to worry about making things look nice. So there we go. We're currently generating 1,597.9 E's per second. Okay, so power. We've got cannons bound to computers, we've got power, and we've got build and flight mode. Now if we go back into flight mode, we can actually fire these cannons. Not firing particularly fast, because we haven't got very many cannons, and they're not firing particularly deadly either. If we, say, go over to this asteroid, which we are doing very slowly because we've got no thrusters connected to our core. Hang on, let's do that first. So, how do you move around space? I've got to tell you that there are no space physics. It doesn't really work like space in KSP. We've been a bit spoiled by that in terms of imagining how things are supposed to work. KSP gets it pretty damn accurately. This is not so. There's friction in space according to this game, so things drifting will slow down, they will stop, and I wouldn't degrade my opinion of the developers or of the game in general hasn't really been changed by the fact that it's not accurate, and that means we're just too used to having KSP, which is really, really good at doing stuff accurately. You can understand the reasons why you can't have things drifting indefinitely, otherwise, you know, you've got a lot of memory to allocate, and you've got problems. Say if you get things up to incredible light speed, nearly light speed, and then you hit them into other things, you've got to process the reaction, and you've got things flying everywhere, and it would be chaotic. So there's friction in space, things will slow down, and there is also a maximum speed. By default, this is 50 kilometers per hour, the speed of a very slow car. Now obviously, not every one of you will know, but technically there is no speed limit other than the speed of light, so that really shouldn't be the case. But again, you can't have things whizzing in at the speed of light and hitting other things travelling equally fast in the opposite direction. Otherwise it would be havoc. So, 50 kilometers per hour. This can be changed. You can go into settings if you run a dedicated server, which you can purchase via a link on starmade.org. Really fun. I suggest playing this game with friends. It is a lot better in that regard. But you can up that speed limit. We've currently got it on 110 on our server, I believe, which is, you know, it's pretty decent. Things tend not to be too mad above that speed limit. I was trying to argue for 300 kilometers per hour, but when you have massive ships hitting into each other, that can get a bit tricky. And I'll show you what I mean by massive ships in just a second. But anyway, what was I talking about? So, space, physics, thrusters. You have a max speed, 50 kilometers per hour by default. And thrusters are another block you should have by default, and you can just place these. Unlike power, they don't work. Ooh, that's nice. That's new. That must be new. They introduced the red glow recently, but I think that trail is actually quite a new texture. Doesn't look great, but it looks better than just having nothing, I suppose. So, yeah, just the amount of blocks you have is proportionate to the amount of thrust you have. I don't think it's any more detailed than that in terms of thrusters. So you really haven't got a lot to worry about. So there you go. You've got power. Thrusters also do take power. So power is a big thing, especially when you're building big ships, which require a lot of thrusters to move them. But yeah, those are your main things you need. You need weapons. You need a weapons computer to control those weapons. You need salvage cannons and a salvage computer to control them. You need power generation to power everything, and thrusters so you can press space and you can move about a lot quicker. What quantities you want to do these in depends on what type of ship you want to make. And there are some more things we'll go into. For instance, hull, which is something very basic. Obviously you've got all these weapon systems and all these beautiful looking things, and now you're going to coat them in grey. You're going to coat them in greyness. Why? Because if things attack you, then you are going to be susceptible to them. You're going to take damage. And coating everything in hull is the best way to ensure that you stave off the severe damage, at least for a while. Now, the better way to do it, did I say the best way? No, that's incorrect. The best way to stave off damage is to actually use shield dispersers. So before I put it on the hull, we're going to have to talk about that. Shield dispersers are not something you'll have in your inventory when you spawn, which gives people the wrong impression that you don't need them. Not true. You definitely need them. Shield dispersers. Go into the shop, they'll be under ship, scroll down, and you'll find them here. Not usually not a lot of them around, and they usually cost quite a bit. And these also rely on power, and they will create a shield around your ship. The more of these you have, the more shield you have, as long as you have enough power to sustain them under fire. I can put some here. Just trying to figure out the best place to put them. There we go, that's not bad. Like so. There we go, got a bit of a ship going. Bit of a shit. We've got a bit of a ship going. I definitely said ship, don't mistake it for anything else. So yeah, we've got shield dispersers, we've got all a load of other nonsense. There's a lot more parts to buy, there's a lot more parts and they all have their own uses. One thing I'd recommend getting is your cockpit. Now this can give you a different vantage point around your ship. So this is your probe core. This is what you need to protect. If your probe core gets too badly damaged, your entire ship will blow up after a section of overheating, which you don't want. When you're attacking other pirates and when you're attacking space stations and whatnot, you need to damage their ship core in order to, or their station core, in order to make them overheat, and then you can salvage them. But yeah, you need to protect your ship core. Do this with shields, do this with hull, and do this with cockpits. You need to be able to access it, which is when you start making massive interiors, like we'll see in a second. So you need to be able to get to it in order to get in and out of your ship by pressing R. If I'd hidden that away with shield dispersers, I'd have to delete them in order to get back to it. Press R to get in. But with cockpits, you can cover them up somewhat, and you can swap your vantage point. So this is the vantage point of the core, and this is the vantage point of the cockpit. Not much difference, but if we go back into build mode, when you've surrounded your ship core with hull or with cannons or whatnot, it starts to get a bit more important when your vantage point usually looks like this. And that's got a lot of stuff covering up. Or if you've got a big interior in your biggest ship, then your main flight view will be looking out into the inside of your ship, and you won't be able to see the enemies. By pressing the left and right arrow keys, you can change your vantage points between your cockpits and your core. And those are the main things you'll need. Although, to start off with, cockpits, you generally probably won't have enough money to buy them after buying all the hull. Hull is something you need a lot of. To put it in perspective, I've got 50 hull currently, and I'm just going to coat all the main systems really quickly. yeah, so I started out with 50 hull, and here we go. So we'll coat everything. There's one more thing we need to go into, which I've just realised I haven't been using. But there we go, down to 19, down to 16. The biggest ships use about 11, 10, 9, 8, 3, 1. The biggest ships use about 100,000. So we start off with 50. This is a very small ship. We start off with 50. It looks ugly. And the biggest ships use about 100,000. We'll see some in a second. So there we go. Here's your first ship. Isn't it beautiful? Really isn't particularly good. It's not got an interior. You'll run out of hull first. That's the first thing you'll run out of. And that's why you need to buy your salvage cannons first. Because you need to go and salvage stuff. Now, we'll get into flight mode. And let's go have a quick look-see around. There's an asteroid over there that we'll go to. There we go, accelerating with the use of our hypercoreal thrusters and our power. Oh, and we're going to hit into it. Oh, there's no damage in terms of hitting into things, but using our weapons, we can start firing at these blocks. There you go. Very slow firing, very low damage, just enough to, I think, 160 damage is enough to destroy a block outright. So because we've got 2 cannons doing 56, which doesn't add up to 160, we're able to destroy these blocks. Hull, no, it's 1 block of hull is 160, I think. And yeah, so salvaging. Swap to our salvage cannon. Get this beam, which I can't see for some reason. Why can't I see it? Where's the beam? Is this a bug? What's going on here? I can't see. Okay, for some reason salvage cannons aren't working today. We had it working earlier, I'm not sure why it's not working, but should be able to. So you should have your salvage cannon, you should be able to fire, and if you aim at a block, you'll be able to pick it up, and it'll go into your inventory. And that is most of the things I really want to talk about in this What Is Starmade introduction video. In order to in order to get credits like I've got, in order to buy things from the shop, you'll want to start off maybe mining these ores, which you'll find on asteroids, you'll find on planets, and you'll also want to raid space stations, which we'll go into in another video. Now, I've been saying I'm going to show you what things can look like. So, down here, I've got a quick shuttle that we made. I'm going to ditch this disgrace of a craft that we've made quickly. I'm just going to leave it here. There you go. There's your terrible first ship. Enjoy. Things get bigger. Like this. Which has got hypercore thrusters, and it's got plex door, which we'll go into. I've also got some in my inventory, as you probably noticed. It actually got an interior. Now, the problem is, this ship's very badly designed, because we actually have to go down here and access our ship core. But here we go. Here's the ship. So this is a little transport shuttle. And we're going to go over in this direction, say goodbye to our first ship. I'm going to show you quickly what can be made. Now, navigation system, that's a basic concept. Navigation can be accessed by pressing N. You'll have a load of random stuff on here that you... Actually, starting out, you probably really won't have much stuff on here. But I think if we go over in this direction, you won't really have much. I've got a lot of ships around because we've got a lot of ships in this server, but it will tell you stuff like ships, it will tell you things like space stations, shops, asteroids, planets, and all the other things you might want to know about. This is how big ships can get. There's the Battlestar Achilles, you might have seen that trailer. This is the Battlestar Pegasus, or Zeus as Enter Elysium is calling it, his baby. And it's amazing. This is Battlestar Galactica that I'm building. Things get big. Pegasus has probably used over 200,000 hardened hull at the moment. Hardened hull being a lot better than regular hull. And if we do a bit of a size comparison. Prepare to meet Starmade. Things get a lot more impressive as you play on. Start small, enjoy the curve upwards, because you'll never really be satisfied when going back to small ships like this, unless they have a specific purpose. This is a little shuttle, it nips me around, gets me to different places, and it does its job. But yeah, That is Starmade. What is Starmade? It's a Minecraft-inspired 3D sandbox space shooter with a lot of potential for variety, creativity, and some interesting concepts to look into. And that's your basic principles. Occasionally you'll find pirates, you'll have to fight them. To start off with, you won't be able to fight them because you'll be too weak, you'll have to run from them, that's my advice. Until you get strong enough, maybe you can take them on then. But it's still in alpha. It's available from starmade.org for free download, although you can pre-purchase it because it will eventually be going into paid. You'll have to pay for it someday once they actually release the game. And by pre-purchasing it, you're supporting the developers now, and you're getting a guarantee that you'll be able to access that game when it's released. But that is the end of this video. It's gone for longer than I intended, but I think it's given a pretty good covering of what the potential in this game is. Thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you all next time.